In 1985, the unthinkable happened. The world's most powerful beverage brand made a decision so catastrophic that it rattled grocery aisles, corporate boardrooms, and dinner tables across America. Coca-Cola, a company that had survived world wars, economic collapse, and nearly a century without altering its sacred formula, suddenly faced a threat more dangerous than any rival. It didn't come from Pepsi, it came from within. Overnight, something familiar vanished, replaced by a taste that felt like betrayal. What followed wasn't a bad launch or a temporary stumble. It was a full-scale consumer revolt that would push the company to the edge and force a reversal in just 79 days. The phones were already screaming before dawn, red lights blinking in endless sequence. Operators froze as voices poured through the wires, thick with anger, disbelief, and a sense of something sacred having been violated. In kitchens and diners across America, cans were cracked open, lips touched aluminum, and faces tightened in confusion, then betrayal. The taste was wrong, unmistakably wrong, and it carried the weight of a broken promise that no spreadsheet could measure. Somewhere inside Coca-Cola's headquarters, the air felt thinner, the confidence evaporating faster than carbonation. Executives realized the unthinkable was happening. The world's most recognizable drink had turned against its maker. Panic spread like wildfire across the company. Emails were drafted and discarded. Memos circulated in a frenzy. Every solution seemed smaller than the scale of the disaster unfolding outside the walls. Long before the first can of New Coke ever touched a shelf, Coca-Cola stood as a near-mythic presence in American life. Its formula had remained unchanged for nearly a century, woven into memories of war, summer heat, ballparks, and family tables. The brand was more than a drink. It was a cultural anchor, a symbol of shared experience, ritual, and nostalgia. Yet, beneath the surface of that dominance, anxiety had begun to spread. In the early 1980s, Pepsi chipped away at Coke's supremacy with the aggressively successful Pepsi Challenge, a campaign that turned taste into spectacle and doubt into entertainment. Market share slipped slowly but steadily, and for the first time in decades, Coca-Cola no longer felt untouchable. Inside boardrooms, the mood shifted from pride to urgency. Executives stared at charts that suggested history alone might not be enough to hold the line. The pressure wasn't just commercial, it was existential. Losing leadership in cola meant losing cultural authority. As focus groups multiplied and reports stacked higher, Coca-Cola found itself trapped between its past and a future that seemed to demand change at any cost. The brand that once symbolized certainty was now haunted by the possibility that loyalty could dissolve under the bright lights of a blind taste test. To fight back, Coca-Cola turned to research. With near-religious devotion, extensive taste tests were commissioned, involving close to 200,000 consumers, each sip logged, categorized, and reduced to data points meant to reveal the truth about preference. The results were consistent. People favored a sweeter formula, one closer to Pepsi's profile, especially in blind comparisons stripped of logos and nostalgia. Inside the company, belief in empirical evidence hardened into conviction, and conviction into resolve. Executives concluded that the market was speaking clearly, even if the message felt uncomfortable. The philosophy was simple and dangerously elegant. If consumers preferred a sweeter taste, then taste alone should guide the product's evolution. Emotion, memory, and symbolism were treated as secondary variables, assumed to follow quality rather than define it. The decision that followed was unprecedented. Coca-Cola would alter its secret formula for the first time in 99 years and completely replace the original product, not supplement it, not test it regionally, but erase it from shelves entirely. On April 23, 1985, New Coke was launched with confidence born from numbers, not intuition, with the quiet assumption that consumers would adapt once their palates adjusted. Trucks delivered cans to stores, advertising promised continuity, and executives believed the future was waiting to embrace them. The moment of release, however, arrived not with celebration, but with friction. The first reactions were muted, then uneasy, then explosive, as word spread faster than any press release could counter. Coca-Cola's consumer hotline, once modest and receiving around 400 calls a day, was suddenly overwhelmed with more than 1,500 daily messages. Many were furious, some tearful, and others incredulous that a company would discard its own legacy so casually. Protest movements emerged almost overnight, including groups like the Old Cola Drinkers of America, whose very name framed the change as an act of cultural erasure rather than innovation. In public spaces, New Coke commercials were booed, the sound sharp and unmistakable. Symbolic acts of rejection unfolded as people poured the new drink into gutters and sewers, letting it disappear like something unworthy of preservation. Meanwhile, panic buying gripped consumers who began hoarding remaining supplies of the original formula, driving resale prices upward and turning soda into a black market artifact of nostalgia. Each passing day tightened the vice as sales stagnated and the realization settled in that this wasn't resistance to novelty, it was grief. By the second week, the crisis had become theatrical. Television anchors reported live from supermarket aisles where shouting matches erupted between frustrated shoppers and stock clerks. News footage captured empty shelves and carts piled high with New Coke that no one wanted to drink, while calls to radio stations surged with listeners, venting outrage. Executives watched as headlines mocked their pride, labeling it the sweet betrayal of America's favorite drink. In meetings, senior staff huddled in panic, each suggestion sparking heated debates. Restore the old formula, double down on New Coke, run apology campaigns, or issue silent statements. Every decision carried risk, and yet indecision was a risk in itself. The tension was palpable, like a kettle about to explode, because each passing day made the brand more vulnerable. Investors fretted, employees whispered about resignations, and the once unshakable aura of Coca-Cola was cracking under public scrutiny. 79 days later, with pressure mounting and confidence collapsing, Coca-Cola made a move as dramatic as the mistake itself: the return of the original formula under the name Coca-Cola Classic. The response was immediate and emotional. Relief washed over consumers who felt heard at last, as if a missing piece of their identity had been restored. What followed was not the slow rebuilding of trust, but an unexpected surge, as loyalty intensified precisely because it had been tested. The company's swift reversal and public acknowledgement of error reframed the debacle from arrogance to humility, transforming embarrassment into a lesson shared with the world. In the long term, the New Coke episode became a cornerstone case study in marketing history. Brands are not owned by corporations alone, but co-authored by the emotions, memories, and rituals of their consumers. The formula could be measured, optimized, and adjusted, but the meaning of Coca-Cola lived somewhere far less quantifiable. In trying to modernize its taste, the company had nearly dissolved its soul, only to rediscover it through failure. Years later, the echo of that moment still lingers, a reminder that data can illuminate preference but cannot replace identity, and that trust, once shaken, reveals how deeply it was rooted all along. The new Coke debacle stands as proof that even the most powerful brands are fragile constructions, held together not by sugar ratios, but by shared belief. And when that belief is threatened, the backlash can be swift, personal, and unforgiving. Coca-Cola survived not because New Coke worked, but because listening mattered more than insisting, and because admitting a mistake became an act of reconnection rather than retreat. The final question remained suspended in that summer of 1985, unresolved and enduring. How many companies today are standing on the edge of the same mistake, convinced the numbers are enough, while the human truth waits to be ignored? And if you want more stories about billion-dollar brands that ignored the warning signs and paid the ultimate price, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and stay with us for more billion-dollar failures.